Frankenstein, we create the past to preserve the future that we think there should be. So it's a mistake to think that people in my position, the people that run archives, the people that buy collections, it's a mistake to think that those people are neutral, that they're acting in some kind of neutral way that has the future or posterity or history with, you know, glowing lines around it above their heads. You collect what you think is important, you collect what you like, you have your prejudices, you have all of your crazy ideas just like everyone does, and it all translates itself into what's collected. So for instance, we have early 19th century letters on the table that I'll talk about. Those letters at one time, though they were from admittedly really famous people, in the 1960s you could go to Sotheby's or Christie's to an auction and you could buy these letters for $125, $150. You know, it wasn't the 1960s, so that wasn't exactly pocket money. But still, the idea that you could buy a letter that Mary Shelley's father wrote to her where he talks about Frankenstein, you'd think that a letter like that would cost more than $150. But the reality was that for a long time, nobody considered letters from authors to be special. And so it took decades and decades of archivists and librarians saying, you know, maybe sometime in the future somebody would like to read this letter. And then they started buying them from people that had them in private collections. And then they passed into public collections. And so we create the past. And it's always in the prejudice of the future that we think should exist. For me, this was a project that got started because my boss wanted to do a lecture, if he had to, on the material history of Frankenstein. So I don't talk about what's in the book at all. What's in the book is absolutely amazing. It's a book that I think everyone who can read should read. It's a little bit before the time of steampunk, but you know, it's right on the edge, and because of its fascination with galvanism, the new science of galvanism, it's so close, you know, it's really close. Lots of people like to say that it's the very first science fiction novel. So that's when it comes into my purview and when I have to do some thinking about it. And when I put this whole thing together, I was only looking at what's the story behind how the book was written, what's the story behind how the book was published. So that's what I'm going to give you today, and you're going to have a chance to look at some very rare and interesting things. Some of them are not so rare, but are incredibly interesting. And at the very beginning, we've got the annotated Frankenstein. And I mean, this is just an absolutely magnificent book. If you're interested in Frankenstein, if you're interested in Mary Shelley, it's a really, really nice annotated copy of a text.
There's going to be a new edition of the annotated Frankenstein coming out by Leslie Klinger.
Wonderful.
So
this is the Leonard Wolf, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you know, this scholarship just continues and gets richer and richer all the time. And that's what's so great about it, is that more and more people all the time realize what a fantastic writer Mary Shelley was. And I'm always hoping that attention will turn away from Frankenstein and eventually look at other books like The Last Man, which I think is an amazing book, and you know, doesn't get talked about that much and doesn't get read nearly as much, but And then these two books, this book in 2 volumes. This is by Robinson. This is the Frankenstein Notebooks. And so much great stuff is in these 2 books. Facsimile. It's a facsimile of Mary's manuscript. So you get to see that. You get some of that inside The Wolf as well, the annotated. But this is the entire manuscript, photographed from the. I think it's at the Bodleian, but I'm not sure about that. I'm going to play like fast and loose with some of the facts because I'm not a scholar, I'm not a teacher, I'm a librarian. Damn it! And we love to do that, to do the Bones from Star Trek thing, and to occasionally be able to say, damn it, Jim, I'm a librarian, not a doctor. So, this one, when you get a chance to take a look at this. And one of the things that I really found incredibly useful is at the very beginning of the Robinson, it's called the Frankenstein chronology. It begins in 1797 when Mary's born. And then, I'm gonna geek out really a lot about Mary Shelley because I'm just so incredibly impressed with Mary Shelley and her life, so that's what I've got here. Let's start talking about Mary Shelley's life. Mary Shelley is a young genius. It's obvious to her parents. It's obvious to everyone who meets her. As a really young teen, 13, 14 years old, she's going with her mother, Mary Wollstonecraft, one of the earliest feminists, someone who, along with William Godwin, developed the idea of free love. Mary is just every bit as smart as both of her parents, if not smarter. And she just wants to learn, and so she studies science and literature and history and just everything she possibly can, and goes to experiments, which were public events, with her mother of this new science of galvanism. And so at 15, Mary sees dead frogs with electrodes attached to them, and the electricity's turned on, and the dead frog's limbs begin to twitch. So before she ever begins to write Frankenstein, Mary has this image in her mind of dead bodies can be seemingly brought back to life with the application of electricity. It's only a very small leap to then say it could be brought completely back to life. So this is a pattern that's set where Mary is saving and recording everything she sees, everything she hears, and it all becomes part of what she uses when she starts to write. Shelley is a young radical poet who, admires William Godwin for his radical socialist views, his views on free love. And Shelley introduces himself to William Godwin, and then he kind of inserts himself into the Godwin-Wollstonecraft house. And at first, he likes Jane, Mary's older stepsister. But then after they meet, they're separated by a couple of events. When they finally come back together again,